I want to have our panelists come up, and first I'm going to introduce them as they come up. This is like, we should have had walk-up music for them, but first off is we heard from Jason Henderson yesterday morning, but Jason is Vice President for our Extension Outreach here at Iowa State, and I really like the purple tie Jason is wearing this morning. Next is Laura Jackson with the Wellmark Foundation, and Laura is Executive Vice President for Health, Equity, and Access and Improvement. There are stairs, people. We don't need any work comp claims. The universities are self-insured, so with Wellmark. So there we go. Next is Edith Parker, who is the Dean of the University of Iowa College of Public Health. And then I am happy to announce the communities. So for those of you who were at the joint Empower Rural Iowa Rural Development Council meeting in December, we announced, Bill Minner, our fearless leader, announced that we would be selecting 2 communities to pilot this process. And it's built around the frameworks where we're doing the assessment, but ultimately it's a planning process. We will all be working with these 2 pilot communities to help them develop a community-wide plan, focusing on around the 8 wealth capitals. And the one thing I would add about the wealth capitals is they have deep roots in Iowa. Jan and Cornelia Flora, who were internationally known sociologists at Iowa State University, did the initial research on this, and then it's been expanded by Rupri, which is at the University of Iowa. So, all right, our pilot communities. So first up is Keosauqua, Van Buren County. Is Joy here? I have not seen, there we are. Joy Paget is General Manager of the Hotel Manning and is also actively engaged in Engage Keosauqua and many other hats she wears. And our next pilot community is Manchester. And so Sarah Maurer, who's with GMB Bank and also, as both of them are, very active community volunteers. So with that, we're gonna start asking some tough questions of them. But first off, Mary provided us a good overview of, why the coalitions come together. And the Zoominar that she referenced kind of lit the fire on us. But this group, the coalition, has been working together for months, actually going back to early 2023. And many people have been involved. And so today's just a continuation, but it's an exciting start for us. So I'm going to first ask Edith, Laura, Jason, and I'll throw in my 2 cents on this too, is, why did we agree? Why are we being involved in this? Why are individual organizations, our individual institutions decided to join the coalition to bring resources, people resources, time, money, et cetera, to the collaboration? So with that, I'm going to start with Edith.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Thanks. Our mission of our College of Public Health really is to prevent illness and promote health throughout Iowa. That is our primary mission. And we have a history of working with communities throughout Iowa on health issues that they have identified. Prevention is complex. And I think we're learning that, health, the promotion of health, production of health is really only 20% of that is really related to health care. And the rest of it is what we do every day. And you guys get it because it's economic development, right? It's housing, it's education, it's social cohesion, it's all the issues that you're working on. And so we at the college are really excited about this because I think it's doing exactly what we need to move the needle on health in Iowa. I think we're also very excited because of the nature of the coalition. Look at my pens. And I want to say that gold cuts across all 3 Regent universities. So I think the Lieutenant Governor said yesterday that Caitlin Clark brought us together. Well, that's true and love it. I'm hoping I'm not right. I think Caitlin's a once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. I think Lisa Bluter's trying to get out there and prove me wrong in recruitment. But I think that this and projects like these are really what are for me, very exciting because through you, through communities, you've brought the Regent universities together to collaborate with the state, with Wellmark, with this, coalition, et cetera. And so, and with the power of communities to help guide us, I think we're really, really excited about this.
Jason?
At Iowa State, we're the land-grant university. We were designed over 100 years ago to how do we take our discoveries that we have and turn them into practical applications and education for all of our communities. And so we have a presence in all 99 counties. Most people recognize us through 4-H, right? Or agriculture, master gardeners on some of those programs. But we've been doing human sciences and community and economic development for over 100 years in various different ways. And so it's just a real exciting thing. And for us, the power of extension comes from the partnerships that we bring. We at the university, we bring the science and research-based knowledge. And we combine it with the insights and knowledge that it's embedded in our communities through your lived experiences. And if you pull that together, then that's just an amazing and powerful combination for us to grow economies and just help make life better throughout Iowa. But we also know that Iowa State doesn't corner the market on the research, right? And that for us is why we partner with our sister institutions at the University of Iowa and UNI about how do we bring our strengths together and work collaboratively on that part. And so when you do that, it's just those partnerships and the collaborations, and you know it from your living it in your communities, what really makes a really strength, and you can really move a lot of things in this area.
Laura?
All right. So I'm gonna echo a few things that Jason and Edith just said, but I'm gonna start first with, you're probably thinking, why is a health insurance company sitting up here? And I'm gonna tell you just briefly why. So Wellmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield has been around for 85 plus years. And it's weird to say out loud, but I've been part of the organization for almost 22 years. That's a long time for me. And when I walked into the organization, one of the first things I recognized is we have been focused for a very long time on trying to abate the rate of increase in healthcare costs. One, because it's unsustainable. Two, it's unaffordable for so many. And when you think about access to healthcare, we all deserve to have access to healthcare. Health is priceless, it's precious, it's personal. And so about 12 years ago, we took the lessons that Edith just talked about, which we know that over 80% of what allows you to live a long, healthy life actually occurs outside the healthcare system, like she said. It's where you live, learn, work, and play. And so knowing that, we brought the Blue Zones project to Iowa that was really intended to help communities engineer making the healthy choice the easy choice. And if you guys are tying the days together, you heard Jason say that as well yesterday. And then we pivoted to Healthy Hometown, which was really more of meeting communities where they're at, giving them self-service tools. Then we went through COVID, and then we came out of COVID, I think. I'm not sure. I had it recently, so I don't know. But when we came out, we said, you know what? It is so clear no one organization can make a fundamental difference in the health and the wealth of our communities. And so we all got together, and what I'm really pleased to say is when we started to put the coalition together and had the conversation around this, we looked and said, we're all working in some way, shape, or form trying to make our communities healthier, and in particular, our rural communities. And when we said, do you guys want to pool our resources and do this together? There was not a hesitation in the room. I mean, I think, Jason, you were on the job like maybe a couple of months, and you're like, I'm in. I'm like, are you sure you don't have to check with anybody? He goes, no, I'm in. I'm like, okay. So it is really, truly a pleasure and a privilege to think about how we collectively together can help communities, and Manchester and Keosauqua are going to help us pave the way. How we help you think about not only increasing the wealth in your community, but most importantly, the health of the people who live in it. So that's why we're part of this. We're pleased. Yeah.
So from our perspective, and particularly I'm going to come at it from the practitioner side of things, because that's what our team at IDM are, is, you know, we've worked in a lot of your communities. We've facilitated a lot of designed a lot of strategic planning processes, but the wealth capital takes a holistic look. When I got into economic development 30 plus years ago, workforce wasn't a conversation. You know, Mary touched on this. Health issues were not a conversation. Now they're front and center in the work that we do, and so it's so critical. And then also from the standpoint of, we've worked a lot with Jason's team over the years with Extension, but we've never worked with the University of Iowa College of Public Health. We've never worked with Wellmark. and we look at, as Laura talked about, what everyone is bringing to the coalition, it's a significant win-win. And the sum is greater than the parts there. So, we're pretty excited about the work that we're going to be doing here in the next two communities. And speaking of the two communities, now we're going to put you on the spotlight, both of you. So when Bill unveiled this, shared this back in December in Grinnell at the Joint Empower and Rural Development Council meeting, both of your communities were proactive. You said, pick us. And you've had to do some work to get to that point, because we, as a coalition, we identified a number of communities. We looked at measures. We decided, okay, this is gonna be a data-driven approach, and so in our selection process, we're gonna use data. And so you've been pulling together planning teams in your communities, and at the end of this, you're gonna be signing a charter. And it outlines what the communities are gonna be doing, but it also outlines what we are gonna be doing. So I wanna start with Joe, why? Why did you raise your hand? Why did Van Buren County say, we wanna participate? And then I'm gonna ask Sarah the same question for Manchester.
Well, I think mainly because the coalition is so strong, and these are the people that we seek out all the time for these projects that we have in mind, and we don't know where to find the resources. And they came to us and said, hey, we want to help you, or we think you guys are one of those teams we want, so we would be crazy not to take that opportunity.
Sarah?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. When we brought our wealth capital group together and met with these folks, it was just a no-brainer. I mean, it was something that, you don't get an opportunity like that very often, and we jumped on it and we were ecstatic, and everybody is just excited to see where it leads. So we're really happy.
One thing I would share is we had initial calls with both communities. Those community leaders, and Sarah and Joy both were in it, they were like, yes. We're like, well, we're just telling you about it right now. So then we had an in-person meeting, and we kind of wanted to fly under the radar, and then one of them, the lieutenant governor shows up at, and state legislators show up at. Both of them were expecting a handful of people. In Manchester, it sounded like half the town was there. And down in Keosauqua, the Hotel Manning banquet room was full. So we're like, okay, there's some interest here. So, and one of the things that we talked about is the uniqueness. And so I'm gonna ask Jason this. What do you see unique about the work ahead of in these two pilot communities, and particularly with the wealth capital approach and the framework and kind of the holistic approach we're looking at?
Yeah, I think the uniqueness comes from, this is an emerging and evolving process. And when you go through and you take the wealth capitals to explore your communities, you're trying to find what are those strengths that you want to build off of and some of those weaknesses. But it's going to be a lot of variation, and it has to be flexible and really adaptable, because Keosauqua and Manchester are very different types of communities. And so it's going through this process of exploration and identifying what's the unique niche or the value that contributes to this community of going through there. And so it's not really, we've got to get in there. It's like there's no recipe, right? There's some processes you have to go through, and then having be flexible and adaptable enough that when things get revealed, you're like, oh, okay. And being willing to then lean into it and follow that path. But letting the community really anchor and drive where they want to go with a lot of resources around them to support them in that growth.
Sarah, how about from your perspective? What do you see unique about this?
I think just the comprehensive approach. Again, it's bringing so many different people together, and it's a unique opportunity that nobody's had before. And we're just super excited to get our community involved. We have people who are, already kind of know a little bit about it and wondering how they can help and see. And kind of what Jason said, we might think that there's one issue in our community that we need to focus on, but maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something we can't see, bringing new eyes to the community and somebody new, and using their resources will definitely provide insight to where we need to head in the future.
Joy?
Unique, of course. a Hawkeye, a Cyclone, a Panther together. That's pretty unique. But the collaboration, I think, we've talked about too. I mean, the Hotel Manning, we thought we were saving a building. You know, it was historic preservation. We got 89 people together to do that, and now it's become this cultural hub, social hub. We have live music, we have art displays, we have high school dances. These kids have kind of adopted it too. It's not just the old people that put the money in that show up every Thursday for dinner. So I think this holistic approach and these things that you get out of something you didn't know you were going to get is what we're shooting for, and I think we have the people together to do it.
One thing, and Sarah touched on this, one of the things we asked as they pulled together their planning team is to think about the eight what I call buckets of the framework, and identify representation from each of those areas, because you want to be holistic on this. And so from a community economic development standpoint, that's a different approach, as opposed to we often end up rounding up the usual suspects to be on the planning team and be engaged. So, all right, one of the things we've I think Jason did a great job yesterday morning when we talk about challenges. Rural Iowa in general, we have our challenges, and Mary touched on this as well, and in health. And, health is one of them, wealth tied to that, economic growth, economic prosperity is one of them. But this is going to be a jump ball for all of you, is what do you hope we achieve out of this? From your participation as a pilot community, and your participation as an organization and an institution. So I'll start all the way over with Sarah. What are you hoping to achieve out of this?
I think our main goal is to involve people who maybe haven't been involved in processes before. Just like, it's always been the same people a lot of times on a lot of the boards and committees, and just being able to ask other people to get involved, and finding people, like you said, from the 8 wealth capitals, and having their ideas and their thoughts and their, plans, and coming together to form one plan to make Manchester a better place is our ultimate goal. So,
Joy?
My stuff, but no. But I think that is absolutely it. I mean, we invited, we were so intentional of who we've asked to be on our planning committees by choosing those, each of the capitals. And if you're going to talk about infrastructure, then why wouldn't we have the county engineer involved? He's never been to a meeting before that we've been involved in these big picture conversations. So those are the things I really think we're going to get more of that engagement. Keosauqua kind of starts the ball on a lot of things, but we do want to, include the whole county. We want to be better at that. Our school district is recently consolidated. Our hospital is a Van Buren County hospital, so it's more than just Keosauqua, and I think that's that other approach that this is going to help with in our area too.
Edith?
Thanks. I think our organization really wants to learn from this. And the pilots, as Jason said, this comprehensive wealth framework really has to be adapted to the strengths of the communities and the needs. And so we'll be working on the evaluation for this, and we want it to be a real formative, we want it to be helpful, we want it to be participatory and not, oh, at the end, sorry, but rather feedback so we can adapt this whole process as we move along. And also learning from our partners, the expertise of Iowa State, UNI, the Economic Development Council, Wellmark. So we're really excited about that.
Jason?
I guess from my standpoint, we want to show that it can be done. Lieutenant Governor talked about the narrative, right, yesterday at that. It's like when you talk at different places and they talk about rural places, they're always talking about it in deficit, all the things that we don't have. And I think we can change the narrative. And how do we do this, right? And how do we bring the resources that we have in the state that's invested in so many different ways, from the public sector to the communities to private organizations, and then the state government through IEDA is helping with this too as well. So how do we pull it together and just show it can be done? And how do we change the narrative of figuring out what we can do in rural Iowa?
Laura?
So I'm going to take a little bit about what my colleagues said, but I'm going to double down because I'm going to give you three things. And it's actually what I want for both of these communities. It really has nothing to do with Wellmark, because when you think about, people pay us money for health insurance premiums. So us being involved in this means that however we deploy our resources needs to accrue to the interest of Iowans, right? Because we're not going anywhere. We've been here forever. And we're an Iowa company. We don't work other places other than the state of South Dakota. So what I hope for both of you is, like Jason said, I want this to work. And when we did the orientation meetings in your communities, we asked your community representatives that day, paint the picture of your ideal community. Where would you most want to live? If you've been there before, you dream about it, what does that look like? And none of you said, I want our GDP to be at this number, right? You said things like, I want bustling streets. I want, people to come together. You described a really great place, and you both already have a lot of that, but I can tell that you want more. So that's the number one thing that I hope comes out of this, is that you get what you want out of it. I would say number two, I hope that communities can switch the paradigm, that you build a community for the people who live in it. You don't think about the numbers and the money first. You think about what it is that people want, that they need to thrive. And then probably last, but certainly probably most important, I would love to see in the long term that people in your communities truly demonstrate that they can live a longer, but also a healthier life. Because a long life when you're not healthy is no fun. And so I hope for everybody who lives in your communities.
So one thing that's kind of unique about this process, these two pilots, and Edith touched on this, is we actually are building in evaluation. We actually have evaluators from the University of Iowa Public Health who are going to be evaluating this to see how are we doing, to see if we're making an impact. And one of our coalition meetings, I said, this is going to be an evaluator's nightmare, because two communities, two facilitation teams, made up of individuals from multiple institutions facilitating a process, they're going to earn their money on this one. So Laura touched on that. In both those meetings, she posed that question to all the volunteers in the room, is, what is that ideal community for them? And it wasn't, as you said, it wasn't those kind of quick, clean answers. And it's interesting, Sarah, you touched on we're wanting to expand our cast a wider net of volunteers. That was one of the first things in Van Buren County when we were in Keosauqua is they're like, we want to get more people involved. We're getting a little tired here. So it's interesting that they both have touched on that. But I want to first ask Joy and Sarah this. If you think about this, 5 years from now, where do you hope you're at for Manchester, Delaware County? Where do you hope you're at? What do you hope for the outcomes because of this effort?
Honestly, our biggest goal going into this is making Manchester, Delaware County a place that people don't want to leave. I mean, that they don't have to leave. We have a thriving hospital right now, but could it be better? Probably. We have, 3 school districts within our county, and they're wonderful, and we like people coming back to the community, and that's what we want to have. People to bring their families back, raise their kids, work, play, just improve on what we have, honestly. We have a lot of good things going for us, but there's always room for improvement. And so our biggest thing is, filling storefronts and, retaining workforce, bringing new business and industry to town. Housing is always an issue. So all those things, those are the things that come to our mind right away and at the forefront, but there could be underlying things that we could work on, and we're open to that. And I think that's the biggest thing going into this, is knowing that there are opportunities out there, and we just got to find them.
Joy, how about you?
Well, I wish Mel was here, because our artist that was there that day painted the picture. It was wonderful, but it's the bustling streets, it's some outdoor restaurants and people are sitting there enjoying it. It's the festivals we have, being even bigger. It's good streets, it's sidewalks that the kids are walking onto school in a centralized elementary. I said that out loud, I hope that. But it's those things. It's, and you just feel that sense of community pride as soon as you pull in. It's the old people coming down, the retirees walking downtown on our trails, and, the riverfront getting done, and our new boat launch, and those things, being completed and not just talked about. That's what we're looking for.
So all of you in front should have in front of you a one-pager. And what we want to do now is, since we have a little time, is to open it up and see if there's any questions that any of you have for either the communities or any of the folks of the coalition or just in general. Come on, people. Troy.
My question's for Laura. Yeah, sort of. I'm close enough, but it's still not working. You can hear me. I can hear you. Good. Well, there you go. Not enough coffee, obviously. My question is, you talked about kind of rural health and vitality, and from a healthcare perspective. Could you just elaborate a little bit more about that? And, I mentioned earlier in my remarks that where I'm from, and my observation when I go back there about food options and things of that nature. So could you maybe just elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Sure, I can sure try, Troy. So in Iowa, we have about 1.2 million people who live in rural communities. So that's almost, it's like over a third of the population of Iowa. And I am one of those beneficiaries of growing up in rural Iowa. And I know what it can be like, but I also know when I visit communities, when you see challenges, when you think about healthcare. And we have really tried to understand deeply when you look at health outcomes and you walk back to see where health is really created. Healthcare is definitely one of those things, but it's so much more. It's food deserts. I sat in a breakout session yesterday. We talked about pharmacy deserts. It's a myriad of things. And like my colleagues up here said, if you've been in one community, you've been in one community. So the way in which we have to solve, whether it's healthcare or the upstream things that we talked about, we're going to have to really put our arms around the community to help them understand what they have versus what they could access. And I would tell you too that when we've looked at some challenges with regard to health outcomes and just even access to care, Lieutenant Governor talked about the EMS pilot, which we are like giddy to watch. And when it works, I'm not going to say if it works, when it works, and we can prove it, I don't think there's a person in the state that won't want to help expand it, right? Because we all want to have access to health care, whether that's an ambulance that picks us up when we call 911, or whether that's, I want to move to one of these amazing communities and I want to start a family, but there's no OB-GYNs, there's no birthing centers. So the way that we have to solve those problems are going to be different than in the urban centers. And it's going to take creativity, and it might not look like it did 20 years ago, but I do believe there's a way. Is that kind of what you were looking for? You betcha.
Shalimar.
So yesterday in one of the sessions, we were talking about how do we actually grade if a community is getting better. And I really liked this because I think that it's a great approach to it, but it doesn't have any metrics attached to it. So are you guys going to add some metrics that maybe we could actually roll this out and have like a grading system that could tell us where we need to improve or where we're doing really well?
Yes. There's going to be more data than you will probably have ever seen, and it's going to be around those. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just be careful what you ask for in terms of metrics. We spend a lot of time, and there's a lot of data in there. But part of it is, I think, from the metrics, is you have to rely on the community of the metrics that matter to some communities are not going to be the ones that matter to others. And so you have to really get embedded with the community to identify those very location-specific, context-specific metrics that you're trying to move and you're trying to impact.
That's a great question about the metrics, and we have a lot of metrics. In fact, we have a placemat full of metrics that it was so large that we kept calling it a placemat. It couldn't fit on an 8x10 or 8x11 sheet. I think another thing that we will want to do here is oftentimes when something works in a community or in our field in health, then we also refer to the black box phenomenon we haven't really documented what we did to make it work. And we're also trying to focus on that because we want to come out of the pilots knowing that when you see one community, you see one community, yet there might be commonalities around the process that you work with a community and a community works with all the folks in the coalition. So we're very conscious about that also.
Just wanted to ask real quick, I think this is fascinating, thank you for doing it. Is the Iowa Rural Vitality Coalition, is there going to be anything like social media, anything that we can watch this as you're going through the process so that we can keep, 2 or 3 years if it goes by that we're still remembering what it is and we can share it with other people?
You want to take that, Laura? Yeah, yes. We're still stay tuned, I think is maybe the.
I think I'll echo Drew, yes. I don't know that we have the perfect plan on how we're going to share it with everybody, but we have every intention to share the progress and make sure that you know kind of where we're at in the journey. Certainly a year from now at this very summit, we want to have these fine ladies or whomever they deem, maybe they're going to pass the baton to somebody and say, you sit up on that stage with those crazy Regents people and Mark. But we want to come back and tell you what we've learned. But along the way, yeah, we absolutely want to share it. And in the spirit of this summit, you guys are all so good at coming up with ideas that work for you. If you have an idea on how you'd like to learn about it, we'd love to hear it. Yeah.
And we're also, our plan is for this coming December's joint Empower and Rural Development Council meeting to have, because we're hoping by that point in time, both communities will have, they may not have their plans finalized, but they're going to start taking shape. So we're hoping that they'll be able to share a little. And we've told them from the start, Jason touched on this, in some ways we're building the plane as we're flying it here. And so what we may think today, how the process is going to go and what they may share in December of 2024 may be slightly different. But that's one of the reasons why they agreed to participate is we're putting more responsibility on them. It's not just they're going to, rally their community, identify their priorities, develop a plan. They're also going to help us shape this process going forward. So stay tuned on that. You might get sick of hearing about it. Yes. Yes.
Teaser.
Hi, Emily McLean with the Greater Des Moines Partnership. I represent not just one community, I represent 23. So my question is there a framework or will there be a framework on how communities can identify wealth capital opportunities to collaborate with one another?
That's a great question.
That's an interesting question. I'm gonna try to answer your question, but I'm also gonna reckon back to what Shalimar asked as well. When Edith and Jason talked about the wealth of metrics and the wealth capitals, when you look at it, you're looking at the wealth capitals and their connections in a community. So it's hard to answer the question, how could people collaborate collectively across the capitals? Because it's intended to look at the community through all of those lenses. And Joy and Sarah both have great examples in their communities where they touched every single capital and it created a really positive ripple effect. And that's the beauty of this framework is you're looking for things that you can do that start to just proliferate across all the capitals. So I don't know that we have an answer yet. Would you agree, Drew, of how you might do that? But
Jason?
So the wealth capital framework, it's not just a community-based focus of where it is. So Laura said when she talked to me after I was here for a couple of months, I said, I'm in. Part of it is because where I previously worked in another state, we also used the wealth capitals as a framework as well. And we were using it at multiple different levels. Some of it at a regional level, some of it at a local level of doing different things. But it was the process of going through and exploring what your community was and letting people self-define what their community was. Like Keosauqua, you're trying to redefine your community from just Keosauqua to the whole county. And how do you get everybody on board? But you can still use those things to explore it at different levels. It's just the starting point is, how do you define your community? Is it a city, a county? Is it a multi-county framework? And then you can use that to explore where you're at and figuring out, wait a minute, I thought I had a housing problem. Really, I don't have a housing problem. I have a broadband problem, right? That might be what you discover is really needed, but you have to go through that process of exploring and really digging deep into your community.
Yeah, as I've looked at this and read more and more about this, there's a great USDA rural development report that gives a good overview on this. the way I look at the wealth capitals is they're a lens for us to look at our community. And I think the Hotel Manning is a great example of how they used and leveraged all 8 of those. As Joy said, they thought they were starting out with a whole, adaptive reuse, historic preservation project, and they tapped into and leveraged all 8 of those to get that project done. And it's a great example that they can look at. And so, that's a lens for us to look at other things in our community. So, another question, Amy?
So this is for Joy and Sarah. This is a cool project. It really has been from the get-go. But you guys are really brave because you're kind of ripping the Band-Aid off. You're a little bit like very, very wonderful bugs under a microscope that we're all watching now. All those little dust bunnies and the things we put under our beds that we don't want the company to see when they come. So that's great for, I would say, the majority of the population, but there's always going to be some people within your community that aren't going to want those things to be pulled out from underneath the bed. So how are you dealing, or have you even had to deal with that yet? Or do you have a plan for that? Or is it just like, we're going to make this happen and people are going to, they're going to join the crowd? So.
Yeah, I'd say, we haven't necessarily dealt with that yet. But like you said, when that time comes and those things come out, I think we just move forward and learn from that and use that to move forward. So I don't necessarily know that, we'll have a whole lot of that, but, there's things that could, definitely come up.
Yeah, we have that every day. So, you just have to, tell the story, kind of prove them wrong. We try not to do it in a mean way, but, sometimes you just have to say, see what we did. It did work out. I also just used the pool analogy the other day, but everybody has a pool problem if you have an old pool. They were all built in the same time frame. We rebuilt ours in 2016. Why do we need a pool? Why do we need a pool? I want things to stay the same. Well, that is the same. We're just replacing the pool. It isn't. Your status quo is staying the same. You just have to do something to do that. So, we're learning ways to deal with the naysayers. And we just try to get them on board and have them come to the meeting and give their input. And it isn't that they don't want it to be better or stay the way it is. They just don't understand a lot of times, too.
Hi, Shannon, Decatur County. I'm guessing as a rural community, developers, you find we have the same people showing up at the table all the time. How did you, I assume there's kind of like a steering committee that's driving the process because you can't have 87 or 89 people involved every day doing this. How did you identify who your steering committee was going to be and what was important to have as part of that steering committee?
We really did just take those wealth capitals, that wheel, and Ashley and I sat together and said, okay, if we're going to include the whole county, and then we're going to include these different capitals, we were very intentional on who we reached out to, and it wasn't the same old people. A handful is, but it really is already a different group than we've ever invited or brought on board right at the beginning when we're just brainstorming.
I would agree with that. We also kind of just sat down and went through each wealth capital and determined who would be a good fit for that, made a list and kind of went from there. The thing is, not always the same people, but also reaching out to those people who've been involved in a lot of other things, just because of their knowledge and their experience, I think is good. So it's not like excluding anyone or anything like that. Just bringing more people together, I think, is our goal.
Yes.
Hi.
It's on.
Oh, perfect. Ashley Thompson, IRGC board member, and then United Way of Story County. Laura, maybe a question for you, but for others. So I think of in another life when we worked on accountable care organizations with Unity Point, but there's been blue zones and ACOs and all of these other frameworks and models that we've used in rural communities and across the state. And we've seen that sustainability is always the issue there. So there's transformational work that happens. It's great. It's good. We get 3, 4, 5 years down the road. We're like, how are we going to fund this, or how is this going to look in the future? So can you talk a little bit about what makes this framework and the work that we're doing with the coalition different?
Yeah, sustainability is a really good question. Good to see you, Ashley. I haven't seen you in a long time. And I'm not going to speak for my colleagues, so you guys chime in. But when you think about what the framework really does, it's educational, if nothing else, and it is creating a new mindset and a new paradigm so that you're always thinking across the capitals. So what we hope, and I think this is fair to say, I'm going to look at my colleagues here, is that people continually use the framework as they think about maybe a new project or a new idea, and they don't just laser in on a thing. They think about the framework holistically every single time. And hopefully what that does is you create lots of wins that way, your community sees the progress, and so you don't just pick a thing, you look at everything and choose the best thing for the community. So that would be the way that I would say kind of the intellectual sustainability is trying to change that paradigm. But I think from a financial perspective, one of the things that we believe the coalition's strength can be, we all know a whole lot of things, but no one of us organizations, we don't know everything, and we don't know where to go sometimes. And certainly as communities, this whole summit is a wealth of knowledge with resources. So we hope to really curate really good resources, funding streams. What we've always said is in rural communities, if you look across the state of Iowa and even across the country, there's a wealth of resources ready to help people, and there's a lot of funding streams. But if you don't know where to go get them, sometimes that's half the battle. And then once you find them, do you know how to use them? And so that's what we hope to bring to it. And then, like Edith said, in the evaluation process, we will evaluate how we help sustain this. And I'm going to just go with the affirmative. Once we know this is successful, we want to make sure we do know how to teach people how to sustain it. Is that fair?
I just want to add that Extension's been around for 100 years. We're in all these communities. When this project ends, we're going to still be in all these communities. And for us, that's a part of it, is we're not in it for the short haul, right? We're in it, and all of our partners are in it for the long haul. And what does this mean? So we will always have a presence and bringing community development in there. So how do we build that into that process? That's, for us, an Extension. That's one of the reasons why we joined and are really excited about it.
Got time for one more question. If they're quick, we might get the second one done.
Talk about where you head from here. What does the next couple of years look like? You've got your first 2 pilots. Now, a year from now, what should we be anticipating?
That's a great question. Okay, well, we are hoping that once we get through the 2 pilots, we feel comfortable with the framework, and then we'll work with more communities. I mentioned the lieutenant governor was at the Manchester session. He's pretty excited about this, and and he's back in the room. I'm not lying, right, Adam? So, and others are excited about it. So what we are hoping is sometime maybe in 25, if we feel comfortable with where things are at, is to invite more folks more communities to come on the journey with us. But to the question over here, we're also, the 2 pilots, we're going to continue to walk with them and help them with implementation. So, we have a long-term vision, but it's a little fuzzy right now, is how I would say. So, all right, we got one last question.
Back to the wealth capitals, talk about how much of a struggle it was to fill those. Like, if you're reaching out beyond all the people that normally help and the people you tap, how hard was it to be able to identify people to fit all of those criteria?
Great question.
Honestly, it really wasn't that difficult. We have, I found in doing a lot of volunteering in different committees and things, just have to ask people. I think a lot of people just are waiting to be asked. They might not feel comfortable or feel included in think they're part of the group. So I think just asking people do you want, is this something you would be interested in? And it's okay if they're not. I mean, there's other people we can ask, but I think just asking people is they're kind of waiting for that, some of them.
One more point, though, and I use the big dogs. Like, this is who it is. It isn't just me running to Des Moines to another meeting and coming back with a project. These are, the universities, Walmart. These are and that helped the people that were like, I don't really like to get involved in that stuff.
I've never been called the big dog. I want to add one compliment to both your communities, though. When we did the orientation, you had a very brave soul in each of those meetings that literally said, it's time that we involve other people in our community that might be immigrants, non-English speaking, and we need to bring them to the table and we need their voices to be heard. And I was blown away that happened in both your communities, which is a huge compliment. And nobody even was rattled. They literally said, we agree. So that's going to be a change maker for you too.
All right, now bills coming up, and we are asking both communities to sign their lives away. And while they're doing that, Amy, I think we now have our logo for the Iowa Rural Vitality Coalition. It should be a microscope.